latest polling has some pretty interesting results in the Democratic primary. Biden still looks to be the front runner, but there are some surprises there. So who's gaining and who's lagging?
Here to chop it up is Team Rising. Chuck Rocha is the president and founder of Solidarity Strategies, serves as senior advisor to the Bernie Sanders presidential campaign. Inez Stepman, senior policy analyst at the Independent Women's Forum and a senior contributor at the Federalist. Welcome to you both.
Good morning.
Good morning.
TGIF.
Chuck,
Yeah,
we gotta start
Great
with you. I mean, a phenomenal poll for Bernie Sanders out of South Carolina, showing 41% of support with black voters for Joe Biden, 12% for Kamala Harris, 15% for Bernie Sanders, with other candidates, including Elizabeth Warren, weighing in at 2%, and everybody else tying in either 1 or 0. Now, just explain why that is such a significant number in South Carolina, given the makeup of the primary electorate.
61% of the people that are regular caucus goers are African American in South Carolina. You couple in a small 8% Latino population and a few other categories that are there, and we're talking about 70% of the electorate will be people of color. That's why that's important. And you can watch these candidates, and from doing this a long time and doing South Carolina with Bernie the last time, we learned a lot of lessons. So we're down there earlier, we're bigger, we're more representative of the communities, we're working in the communities. But more so than that, watch these candidates' travel schedules, right?
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders has spent more time in South Carolina than almost any other state because we take it very seriously, and we're going to play there on every level. And him being down there, us having a robust operation reflects these numbers.
Well, beating Kamala Harris in South Carolina with black voters.
Yeah.
Right,
Is that a surprise to you?
There's also an interesting sort of contra-identity politics line going on, interesting in South Carolina, where Biden has a plurality there, but especially on the issue that Kamala Harris was hitting him on, right? When it comes to racial issues, actually black voters, his plurality there increases, and it's because of black voters trusting Biden over Kamala Harris on actually racial issues, which is sort of a contrary identity politics narrative there that maybe we wouldn't expect, but that's what this poll is showing us.
I find it interesting, too.
I'd also like to say that we also have several secret weapons that I won't make that ain't secret to nobody, and one of those is Senator Nina Turner, who's the senator's not down there this weekend, but guess who's in South Carolina this weekend doing many public events is Senator Nina Turner. We were down there together earlier this week, and I'll tell you one thing that stuck out to me, and I think go into these numbers a little bit, is that we had a room full of staff. We were having this training with all of them, and I just took the time to step back and look at the room, and it was 90% people of color, and of those 99% African Americans. We have African Americans leading every department of our South Carolina operation, and they come from South Carolina. So we went into those communities, listened to those communities, hired those communities, and now empowering those communities, and I think these numbers will only rise.
Well, it's a smart move, and it's a big change from 2016 when that was the biggest knock against Bernie, is that there wasn't the support that we saw in the black community. One thing I saw interesting, I saw Al Sharpton this morning explaining this, that people view attacks on Joe Biden, particularly in the black community, some at least, as an attack on Barack Obama and his legacy itself. How are you guys navigating that in the Bernie campaign, Chuck?
I think what I see on the ground there is there's these overarching narratives that you see on news programs or you see on Twitter. I tell people all the time. But when we're really talking to people on the ground, people always like to take Latinos and put us in an immigration pot. They like to take African Americans wrongly and put them in criminal justice. But when we're on the ground, the things people are telling me are health care. And what about losing health care? What about their jobs in these southern states going to overseas companies? And that's the reason they really find a commonality with Bernie Sanders, which would shock a lot of people on Twitter.
Right.
Inez, what do you make? We got another poll out today. This one's a national preference in the Democratic primary, and Biden continues to lead 26%. That lead has been cut down, though. Warren in this one comes in second, 19%. And then you've got Harris and Sanders tied for third there at 13%. Shout out to Andrew Yang, who notched in at 2%.
There we go. Yeah.
Counts towards the primary to the next debates. What can we say about how the first set of debates has changed the game?
Well, I think initially we thought that Kamala Harris had changed the game maybe perhaps a little bit more than it seems to have actually mattered a little bit further down the line, right? Again, the hit that she made against Joe Biden on racial issues and on busing in particular, I think the hit of that has blunted a little bit, especially since in the follow-up it turned out, her position's not that different from his. In fact, it's hard
It's the same.
It's the same position. I mean, they keep kind of trying to spin away from that basic fact, but
right.
And on Medicare for all.
Yeah.
First she raises her hand, and then she says, well, personally, and now
It is the
she's
second time
against it.
she's
It's the
walked that
second
back.
time she's
It
done
makes it
this.
seem cynical, right? Rather
Yeah.
than a stand of sort of a younger generation that has a different understanding of racial issues against the boomer
Yes.
class here with Joe Biden. But it makes it seem a little bit more like a cynical political hit, and I think that's maybe why she's not seeing as much. I mean, she's absolutely proved herself in the first debate. She is a real contender now in a way that she wasn't before. But even so, I think that the hit of that first debate is somewhat blunted.
I mean, 13% is not much beyond where she's been. I would say that it looks to me, following these polls closely, they're a little bit all over the map since the first primary performances. How is Team Sanders viewing what's going on?
I love when all these people on TV this morning and yesterday, it's like, it's just a snapshot in time, and this is a long race, and it's a marathon. All of those things are right, ladies and gentlemen, but the thing you should pay attention to see the longevity of a real long race is donors, and how many donors people have, and where that money comes from. If you analyze the money of the people after this first quarter comes out, there's a lot of people who've got a lot of maxed out donations, and they can't get that money again. Bernie Sanders has received over 2 million donations, and 99.3% of everybody who's given, guess what, can give again. This is really a long race, but it's a long race in just a handful of states. Once you get to California, this thing is pretty much going to be over, and you're talking about just a few people in Iowa, even fewer people in New Hampshire, and then when you all of this going towards California that starts voting on the same day by mail as Iowa, it's being able to build an organization early enough in these states to actually get your name out here. Right now, this is about a lot of name ID, but you can see the people, and I see it because I work in our states, of real people building real organizations, and those people will have the biggest keys to success.
What did you think of Warren's fundraising numbers? Because she's really followed the Sanders playbook of saying, I'm not going to bend the knee to big donors, we're not doing fundraisers, we're not doing call time, we're just running a grassroots campaign here. What did you think of her being able to pull in 19 million?
We've learned a lot of lessons from 16, and we were really surprised inside the campaign of just how much Bernie Sanders' message caught on early on, right? It's being able to manage that and build the infrastructure around a fundraising model that you can do that every quarter. It's a lot easier to do it in one quarter when you have a snip in time at a debate or have a great soundbite and people give you a lot of money, a la shout out to Kentucky in the Senate race this week. But
Let's not go there.
But can you go for a long term, right? Like you can have a moment on TV.
Right.
But if she can do that cycle in and cycle out quarter by quarter, then it's going to be trouble for lots of people, I think.
What do you think, Inez? Final thought on this before we break.
I mean, I agree with Chuck in terms of the difference between the national level race that I think is more driven by TV and debates because people aren't actually having the organizations, talking to the organizations unless they're in those first few primary states. And Elizabeth Warren, I'm not sure that she is going to do as well in when you actually have to build that campaign. Maybe she will. But the Sanders campaign definitely has more experience here. This is their second time around, and I think that the local dynamics and actually being able to talk to people. And again, some of those issues, like you said, I absolutely agree with this. People care about healthcare. They care about pocketbook issues. They don't only care about the sort of things that grab headlines on TV or might be culture war issues. So I think those issues at the end of the day are going to really influence when people actually go to the vote or actually go caucus.
Yeah.
And whoever builds those infrastructures in those first 5 states to do exactly what my sister just said and takes those issues out there, then that's how it actually happens every day.
Well, I think you make an important point, one we've been making here as well, that where the money comes from and how it's raised is just as important as how much. There's really no excuse for Democratic candidates who claim to be committed to getting money out of politics going and doing these fancy fundraisers anymore. I mean, if you're a congressional candidate and you can raise the money online, what gives with a presidential candidate who's getting town halls and debate stage time, et cetera, pretending like they can't raise the money online? I personally think it's inexcusable. Stick with us. We've got more panel when we come back.